Well, 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 here I am. The game Overthinker on Screw Attack. What a thrill. I want to thank my fans, my enemies, and everyone who's made it possible. And you should thank all those people too, because folks, let me tell you, you want me to have a lot to do. I represent a very, very bad combination of a human being. I'm obnoxiously intelligent, I'm very bitter, and I've got a deep abiding loathing for pretty much everything when the mood strikes me. You do not want me sitting around with free time to stew in, alright? Because if I get too much time to myself, eventually I will figure out and finish that doomsday device that wipes out the entire planet except for me, Natalie Portman, and Veronica Zemanova. Trust me, we're all better off if my time is occupied bitching about video games as opposed to constructing volcano-based launch pads, alright? Alright. So, more than 25 episodes ago in my inauspicious debut, I used what was then the recently announced Bionic Commando revamp as a jumping-off point to ruminate upon the worst excesses of bad art design in modern gaming. If I had only known then that it could also function nicely as a case study in bad story, bad level design, and bad controls too. Ah well. The art design stuff, look, what else is there to say? We all know the score. If a video game looks too much like a video game these days, Douchebag Nation doesn't want anything to do with it. In trying to face down this fact, Bionic Commando winds up lacking any real identity of its own. How can you find your own voice when all your energy is focused on being Gears of Spider-Man 2, Guns of the Patriots? But you knew that going in. What you may not have known, or at least expected, is that it's an astonishing pain in the ass to try and play. The controls are fucking horrible. Not broken in the traditional sense, just awkward to an extent that they cross the fine line separating from challenging and annoying. Just take a look at this. Right stick moves you, left stick moves the camera. A button jump, B button for hand-to-hand, Y for really big hand-to-hand, X to look at shit, right trigger does the gun, left trigger does the bionic arm, right button brings up your inventory, left button is for dodging. The controls for this are mapped out as though someone was going to charge Capcom extra every time they left a button unassigned. Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't the original point of the Xbox to merge the power and online connectivity of a gaming PC with the ease of operation of a console? Now, some of you can already see where I'm going with this, and a goodly number of that precognitive elite is already pissed the hell off, mentally pre-typing an angry letter to me about how awkward, counterintuitive control schemes are just part of the challenge. And for good measure, a few of them will cap it off with a dismissive allusion to other types of control, i.e., hey dude, at least it's not a waggle fest, brah. Allow me to preemptively respond in the most tactful and dignified manner I can muster in these situations. You're fucking wrong. Now, maybe it's just me, but unless it's played with a plastic guitar, a good game's challenge should come from the scenario playing out on screen, not from hunting down the correct button on the input device. It throws up a needless barrier between the player and the game. Instead of skill being determined by alertness and reaction time, it's just layout memorization. It's like handing Jason Bay a bat with a barbed wire handle and telling him that learning and remembering the one non-painful angle to grip the bat is just part of the challenge. No, it's not. Hitting the fucking ball is the challenge in baseball. Holding the bat is supposed to be the simple, intuitive part. Of course, a certain deranged percentage of so-called hardcore gamers, that's the whole point. Another precious artificial wall that keeps gaming closed off to anyone who doesn't have the time or patience to train their fingers until a needlessly complicated control scheme almost seems natural. Hey, guys, how did we get here? The first wave of video games got by with nothing but a single joystick. If you could move in more than 4 directions, or better yet, there was an action button, that was huge advanced. Just think of how many of the games we call legendary classics had no input beyond move and shoot. Now, granted, some of the early home consoles, like Intellivision and ColecoVision, went into button overdrive, but they were approaching gaming from more a home computer outlook than an arcade action outlook. And for games in the action genres, it was still pretty much just moving and shooting. It was the first wave of Japanese-originating home consoles that wound up standardizing multiple action buttons. A whole 2 of them. Look how much mileage the original Super Mario Bros. Got out of that. Move right, move left, climb shit, duck, shoot, and what's this? Running in addition to walking? High tech. With SMB as a foundational reference point, a kind of agreed-on set of control basics took root and grew, most notably in the side-scrolling platformers that dominated the medium from the 80s up through the late 90s. You could pick up almost any game for the first time and already know more or less how to start out. D-pad moves, A-button jumps, B-button attacks. Sometimes they'd swap up those last two, but not often. Press up and B or A and B together, and you'd probably do a special attack if there was one. Multiple weapons, either start or select, probably brings up your inventory menu. Hell, I remember when the Genesis came out with a third button on there, that blew our fucking minds. Bottom line though, nobody spent hours learning how to control a game. The control was natural and intuitive. You picked it up right away so you could get busy learning how to play the game. The shift toward button overkill probably started around Street Fighter II. After all, just look at it. 6 buttons representing 3 levels of punches and kicks, but then here that made sense. That was a 2D fighter, no levels to explore, no extra weapons, no power-ups. It only makes sense to make control mastery the primary focus. But even there, punches and kicks of different strength all in a row is pretty easy to figure out. It was still all about the play strategy in terms of becoming a master. Of course, Street Fighter II and its ilk eventually came home in the 16-bit era, and it brought buttons with them. The age of button overkill had begun. Not at once, of course. At first, responsible designers looked at it in terms of, oh cool, more buttons if we need them, but once they were there, people felt compelled to make more and more use of them, and, well, here we are. Back to the punching bag in question. Let's be very clear on this point. I'm not faulting the game for giving you too many options, just too many awkwardly arranged buttons for executing them. Big one first. Jumping. Why? We all know why, because Spider-Man can do it, and that's where we're borrowing our grappling mechanic from, but practically, why does he need to do it? He's not Spider-Man, who's a lightweight guy, and his whole combat style revolves around keeping himself intermittently airborne. He's a big lug of a soldier carrying around heavy firepower. The grappling arm is his extra ability for getting around. Christ, if there was ever a scenario crying out for a Zelda-style auto-jump mechanic, this is the one. Anything too big to just automatically hop over? Bust out the arm. What else is it there for? Also, gun, soft melee, hard melee. Why are those 3 separate buttons? Does he have 3 arms to fight with? No! In fact, he doesn't even really have 2. The combat isn't really improved by doing it that way as opposed to gun attack and hand attack, at least in my opinion. Or, since there's also a button usable for real-time weaponry switching, why not just one attack button that can be a gun, a fist, or whatever you want to arm him with at the time? It's not as though your fingers won't have plenty to do, since much of the fighting takes place while you're also trying to run around, land your grappling arm, and position the camera. Ah yes, the camera. Game designers, listen up. Being able to reposition the camera stopped being novel 3 generations ago. Unless it's an open-world game or an exploration game, there's not much reason to let me work the camera. This is a pretty linear shooter, so either lock the fucking thing behind me or pre-program the movements for dramatic effect and let me get back to killing shit, alright? Here's another thing too many games do. Why does evade or dodge need to be its own button? You used to see this in the odd 2D game where it kind of made sense since you could only move back and forth and a special dodge move could make for a quick save. But when you're moving around in full open field 3D, why am I pushing a special button to get out of the way instead of just, getting out of the way? Please understand, it's not necessarily the presence of extra buttons that rankles me, it's the constant mistake to try and use all of them at once because they're there. To my mind, most games would do better to keep things down to no more than 3 active action buttons, with all those choices merely allowing you to craft a better control scheme, like having buttons on the shoulders so that the aiming and shooting aren't controlled by the same thumb. It's all just symptomatic of a bigger cancer. The whole damn industry has no sense of discipline anymore. No need to streamline the controls, just spread it over the buttons. No need to finish the game expediently, they'll wait. No need for the game to actually work when it comes out. We'll patch it in the next firmware update. Folks, this is the other shoe dropping on all that extra freedom third-party developers gained when the industry's leadership shifted from intimately involved gaming-only companies who were themselves competing as developers to the smaller gaming arms of multinational megacorporations. Everything comes at a price. My bottom line is simple here, folks. We'd all be better off if designers made it a point to take a less-is-more approach to controllers. Fewer primary buttons, streamlined interface, don't be afraid of situational reaction. Ocarina of Time had 2 primary action buttons. Super Mario Bros. 3 had 2 buttons, period. Those are the 2 games that most frequently end up topping the best of all times lists, no? That's something to think about, isn't it?